Right now, someone is stepping outside for a cigarette. They cup their hands around a lighter, breathe in, and feel whatever they came out here for. If you asked them when humans started doing this, they'd probably guess a few hundred years ago, after Columbus, after tobacco crossed the Atlantic on European ships and spread across trade routes until it became ordinary. They'd be off by about 12,000 years. And that number is not where the story starts. It's just the oldest moment where something survived long enough for us to find it. Here's the problem with this history. Smoke leaves almost nothing behind. A plant burns, turns to ash, and the air carries everything away. Seeds, leaves, carved wooden pipes, woven pouches, all of it disappears within centuries under normal conditions. We have stone tools from 3 million years ago because stone survives everything. The equipment early humans used for smoking was made of wood, fiber, and plant material, and most of it has been gone for a very long time. What we're working with is not the full record. It is only the fragments that time, by accident, failed to destroy. That caveat matters, because every time researchers apply newer tools to older sites, the dates move backward, not forward. Every revision to this timeline has gone in one direction. The oldest confirmed evidence of intentional tobacco use in North America sat inside a small stone hearth in the Great Salt Lake Desert of Utah. In 2021, a team publishing in Nature Human Behavior reported what they found at the bottom of that ancient fireplace: burned tobacco seeds mixed with food remains and waterfowl bones, dated to approximately 12,300 years ago. No pipe, no carved vessel, no cultivation. This was wild tobacco, gathered and placed into a fire by people who were not farmers and never had been. Agriculture wouldn't exist anywhere on Earth for another 2,000 years. These were nomadic hunters living through the final retreat of the last ice age, and they had already found the plant, already understood what it did, already built a fire around it deliberately. That number should sit with you for a moment. 12,300 years ago. But the Utah site cannot tell us how long before that fire the behavior had already been going on. It tells us when we found evidence. Those are not the same thing. Half a world away, in western China's Pamir Mountains, archaeologists excavating ancient burial mounds at a site called Jirzongkal found something different. They published their results in Science Advances in 2019. The burials dated to around 500 BCE, and inside them were wooden braziers, small vessels designed to hold burning material. The chemical residue preserved in those braziers tested positive for THC at concentrations significantly higher than any wild cannabis plant would naturally produce. Whoever prepared those stones had selected for potency. They had obtained cannabis with elevated psychoactive content, carried it to a remote mountain burial site, and burned it inside sealed containers specifically to concentrate the smoke around the dead. This was not an experiment. It had been happening long enough that someone had developed a preference for stronger material. Herodotus described something similar among the Scythians, nomadic people of the Eurasian steppe who erected small felt tents after burials, placed heated stones inside, and threw hemp onto them. He wrote that they would howl with pleasure at the vapor. Historians assumed for a century he was embellishing. Then archaeologists excavated Scythian burial mounds and found exactly what he described: bronze braziers, heated stones, hemp residue. He hadn't exaggerated anything. He had simply watched and written down what he saw. Then there are the Egyptian mummies. In 1992, forensic toxicologist Svetlana Balabanova published results from chemical analysis of 9 ancient Egyptian mummies. The results caused immediate controversy. The analysis returned traces of cocaine, nicotine, and cannabis in multiple specimens. Cocaine comes from the coca plant. Nicotine in concentrated form comes from tobacco. Both grow exclusively in the Americas. In 1000 BCE, no confirmed contact between Egypt and the Americas existed. Critics argued contamination. Balabanova pointed to the distribution of nicotine within the hair shaft rather than on its surface, a pattern produced by systemic exposure during life, not contamination after death. The debate has never been resolved. No study has definitively proven fraud. No study has definitively explained how a South American plant compound accumulated inside the tissues of an Egyptian priestess 3,000 years ago. The file is still open. The data has not changed. So why does this pattern keep appearing? Why does the record show separate cultures on separate continents with no contact with each other, independently arriving at the same behavior? Part of the answer is pharmacological. When you eat a plant, active compounds pass through your digestive system before reaching your blood. The onset is slow and unpredictable. When you burn a plant and breathe the vapor into your lungs, those compounds reach your brain in seconds. Every culture that discovered this reached the same conclusion. Burn it, breathe it. It works immediately. But the deeper answer involves the brain itself. The human nervous system contains a network called the endocannabinoid system, a web of receptors that regulates mood, memory, pain, and appetite. These receptors did not evolve to interact with cannabis. They evolved for internal signaling, using compounds your own brain produces. Cannabis works on human consciousness because its compounds closely resemble something the brain already makes and already knows how to respond to. The same is true of opioids. The same is true of the serotonin pathways that psychedelics affect. These plants did not develop psychoactive properties for humans. They developed them as deterrents against insects. The consequence is that every major psychoactive plant compound has a corresponding receptor in the human brain waiting for it. Not mystical, but remarkable. What the archaeological record shows, almost everywhere these substances appear early, is not recreation. It is ritual. Shamans breathed smoke to enter altered states. The sick were treated with fumigation. The dead were sent off with smoldering offerings placed beside them in the grave. Prayers traveled upward in the smoke. Visions arrived through it. The shaman who breathed those vapors was not relaxing. He was opening a channel. The smoke was the medium. The anthropologist Andrew Weil argued in the 1970s that the desire to periodically alter consciousness functions as a fundamental drive, not a pathology. He observed that children spin themselves dizzy, that nearly every culture on Earth has a traditional psychoactive ritual, and that the impulse appears as consistently embedded in human behavior as hunger. The ancient Vedic texts describe soma, a ritual drink central enough to early Indo-European religious practice that it was preserved in scripture. Scholars have debated for generations what soma actually was. Cannabis, ephedra, and amanita mushrooms are all candidates. What nobody disputes is that it altered the people who consumed it, and they considered it sacred. The transition from sacred to commercial happened at different speeds in different places, but the shape was always the same. The plant treated with reverence because it was powerful became the plant consumed without ceremony because it was available. The brazier placed inside a mountain tomb became the pipe passed after a meal. The shaman's fire became the colonial crop. The colonial crop became the factory. The factory became the cigarette. The tobacco companies didn't invent the behavior. They stripped everything from it except the chemistry and sold what remained. What they sold was the same reach toward the same shift in the same ancient brain. They just removed the ritual, the meaning, and the fire, and packaged the feeling directly. The honest answer to when ancient humans started smoking is, at least 12,300 years ago, almost certainly earlier, and possibly far earlier than anyone has yet found evidence to confirm. The direction the timeline keeps moving is backward. The Utah site pushed the tobacco record back by thousands of years when it was analyzed in 2021. The next site, whenever it's found, will push it back further. What the evidence keeps returning to is not a date, it is a behavior. Consistent, cross-cultural, pre-civilizational. Humans finding specific plants, preparing them, burning them, and breathing what the fire produced. With equipment, with ceremony, with intent. Long before the first city, long before the first written word, long before anyone had a reason to give it that most people today would recognize. The fire came first. It had been burning for hundreds of thousands of years. But when a human first leaned deliberately into its smoke and remembered what it felt like. That one act of prehistoric pattern recognition is where all of it started. The braziers in the mountain tombs, the woven bag in the Utah rock shelter, the billion people stepping outside today. The same reach, going back further than anyone thought, towards something that 12,000 years later, we still don't have a precise name for.